So far, just fitting the sheets in order that they're stacked here and working my way down through this pile is working well. I don't have any problems just following this chart and fitting them in the rooms where they go. Let me give you some advice on fitting gyprock that I didn't find in any leaflets, and no tradie mentioned it to me. Because of the size of these sheets, basically being cut to the width of the room, some of the sheets are almost impossible to get into where they belong. A couple of them you've seen me in the last video take out the veranda and down and in through the laundry door. But a couple of the spots I've realised I can't get the sheets into. So when you're fitting gyprock into a house, have a think about where are your tight corners, and sometimes you've got to make access to get the sheets in. Here's a case in point. Because of the layout of my house, there's no way I can get long sheets into the rooms here. But I mentioned this to Brenda. She came up with a brilliant idea. We're going to bring the sheets into this section of the house through the wardrobe. So to do that, I had to just open things up a little bit, and now we'll be able to walk the sheets in through there. So this bit of wall will be the last bit that I do. I'll get all my long sheets in there for the walls and the ceiling, and then I'll put that stud back in. All things are good. It's great having a clever wife. turns out there's more controversy surrounding the way you fit gyprock sheets than who killed JR in Dallas. I've had a number of comments from gyprock tradies around the world, which I won't bore you with, nitpicking about tiny little details, not taking into account different practices around the world, different terminology around the world. For example, plasterboard in Australia is called gyprock, even though it's not actually gyprock but plasterboard because of the brand name. Try and explain it to people they don't want to know. Anyway, it turns out there's a number of different ways of going about doing this job, and one of them that I'm going to show you, which somebody got quite upset about, was top sheet goes in first. TSGIF is what he referred to it. Everybody knows that TSGIF is the way you go. TSGIF, top sheet goes in first, can be done without a lifter, but normally it's done with a lifter. So I'm going to try this approach just to find out what it's like, how it compares with just doing it the way I've done by hand. Gives me an opportunity to show you how to use the lifter to lift that sheet in for the wall and put it in up the top. After I've done both methods, I'll tell you what I think about each and how they compare. What's the verdict? If you're putting ceilings in first and you've got no cornices and you need to get the top of that top wall sheet snuck up against the ceiling sheet, and putting the top sheet in makes sense because you've got the ceiling sheet to snug it up to. But when you're doing what I'm doing, which I think many of you will copy as well, where you're putting your ceilings in after you put in your wall sheets, none of that applies, particularly where you've got cornices. Like in my case, I've got 75mm of free play between the top of the sheet and the ceiling sheets. So if I've got a 5 or a 10mm gap up there, it doesn't really matter. It's more important in my case to get everything on the bottom. I found it difficult to get this gap really tight. It's much easier to do that when you're putting the top sheet in second. To quote that overused phrase in TV competition reality shows, there can only be one winner. One of you is going to be eliminated and will go home. I think you can guess which one it's going to be. Having done both methods, I wouldn't put the top sheet in first again in my situation. I found it clumsy, awkward, even with 2 people and a lifter. It's much easier to put that bottom sheet in first, put those 2 blocks on the wall like I've showed you, and just slide the sheet up and pop the top sheet onto the top of the bottom sheet. So it gets my vote. The rest of you can argue, but I'm over it. Instead of boring you witless with endless footage of me just fitting gyprock and plasterboard, we'll leave it here for now, and we'll pick things up in the next video when I've finished all the walls and I'm ready to start cladding the ceilings. See you then.